Eli Turner was just an ordinary diplomat on Earth, or at least, that's what he thought. Until the day the call came. It wasn't from his government or his superiors. It was something bigger, something the entire planet had been preparing for, but no one ever truly expected. Eli Turner, the voice on the other end of the communication channel, said, "You have been selected to represent Earth in the Intergalactic Summit. You leave for the Galactic Peace Station in 2 days. Pack your things." Eli blinked, frozen in disbelief. This was not a drill, and it certainly wasn't a normal assignment. He was being sent to negotiate with beings from across the galaxy, creatures who had seen civilizations rise and fall, beings that could destroy Earth in an instant if they so wished. And here he was, just a human, a lone representative of the species, expected to make history. He quickly packed his things, trying to convince himself this was an honor, not a nightmare. A single human diplomat in a galaxy filled with powerful ancient beings, many of whom viewed Earth as nothing more than a dot in the vast expanse of space. It was a daunting thought. The spaceport was bustling with activity when Eli arrived, the air buzzing with the excitement of travelers, traders, and diplomats. He stood out, not just because he was human, but because everyone else seemed so much bigger. Most of the species arriving for the summit were towering, covered in shimmering scales or armored plating. He looked like a child in comparison. Eli felt a twinge of self-doubt. Why had they chosen him? He wasn't special. He didn't have years of military experience or a degree in intergalactic politics. He was just a man who'd studied diplomacy, and now he was representing humanity in front of beings who could manipulate time, space, and the elements themselves. As Eli walked onto the ship, a strange feeling washed over him. The ship was immense, its hulls made of an unfamiliar metal that shimmered like liquid silver. The walls hummed softly, alive with energy. He wasn't sure if it was the technology or the sheer scale of the situation that made him feel small, but he couldn't shake the feeling of being out of his depth. The ship's interior seemed empty, but he knew better. Alien species from all across the galaxy were aboard, ready to convene, ready to make decisions that would shape the future of Earth. And here he was, a single human, with only his voice to change their minds. His heart raced as he stepped into the central hall of the Galactic Peace Station. The leaders of the most powerful civilizations were waiting. They looked at him with curiosity, amusement, and perhaps a little contempt. They didn't expect much from humanity. Eli took a deep breath. He wasn't going to let them think that. He was going to represent Earth with everything he had. Whether they were ready or not, humanity's voice was going to be heard. As Eli stepped into the grand hall of the Galactic Peace Station, the weight of his responsibility became even more real. The room was vast, filled with towering beings from worlds far beyond Earth. Their eyes, many glowing with strange, unnatural colors, all turned to him as he entered. Eli could feel the intensity of their gaze, each one sizing him up, judging him. A single human, standing among beings who had lived for millennia, beings who could wipe out entire planets with the flick of a hand. The first to approach was a massive creature with 4 arms, its body covered in thick, scaly armor that seemed to shimmer in the dim light. Its face was hidden behind a mask, but its eyes, glowing bright blue, stared down at Eli with what could only be described as amusement. "You're the human, aren't you?" The creature's voice echoed in Eli's mind, not through sound, but telepathically. It was deep, resonant, and almost as if the being was looking down from an impossibly high place. How curious. Eli stood tall, trying to keep his nerves in check. "Yes, I'm Eli Turner. I'm here to represent Earth." The creature studied him for a long moment, its gaze piercing, before it spoke again. "Earth, a primitive world, still learning to walk among the stars. Tell me, human, why should we listen to you?" Eli swallowed hard but kept his composure. "Because Earth has something to offer, something you might not expect. Humanity is resourceful, adaptable, and determined. We may be young in the grand scheme of things, but we have the potential to grow, to contribute, to help shape the future." The alien's lips twisted into a faint smile, or what Eli thought might have been a smile, though it looked more like a bare display of sharp teeth. "Potential," the creature mused. "We shall see." Eli felt his pulse quicken as the alien turned away, making its way to the center of the room where other beings had gathered. His confidence wavered for a moment. That hadn't gone well. But Eli knew he couldn't back down. He had a mission to accomplish, not just for him, but for all of humanity. Around him, representatives from other species were mingling, some glancing at him curiously, others with open disdain. The next to approach was a much smaller being, almost delicate in appearance. It had large, luminous eyes that seemed to take in everything with quiet intelligence. Its skin was a soft shade of lavender, and it floated slightly above the ground, moving gracefully with each motion. "Human," it said, its voice calm and soothing. "We've heard much about your species. Your resilience is commendable, but it is also your greatest weakness. You fight, you struggle, but what if you lose? What happens then?" Eli met its gaze, trying to steady his breath. "We fight because we believe in something greater than ourselves. Even if we fall, we rise again." The lavender being stared at him for a long moment. "Perhaps," it said finally, "you are not entirely without value. But you have much to prove." Eli nodded, his mind racing. These aliens, these powerful beings, were not going to make this easy. Every word he spoke was a chance to prove humanity's worth. He had no illusions that the galaxy's leaders would welcome him with open arms. They would test him, challenge him, and maybe even mock him. But Eli wasn't about to back down. He looked around the room, at the different species, the ones who had conquered time, space, and energy itself. He could feel the weight of their judgment pressing down on him. But in that moment, Eli made a silent promise to himself. He would not fail Earth. He would make sure the galaxy knew that humanity was here to stay. As the days passed aboard the Galactic Peace Station, Eli found himself caught in a whirlwind of discussions, debates, and complex alien politics. The different species who had come together for the summit were far from eager to listen to the human diplomat. Some viewed Earth with indifference, while others looked at him with outright disdain. It was clear that his presence was little more than a formality to many. But there was one person who seemed different. Lyra was a member of a species known as the Virilian, a peaceful and advanced race that had long been allies to many in the galaxy. She was smaller than most of the other delegates, with pale green skin that shimmered like polished jade. Her eyes were large and bright, filled with a deep understanding that made her seem wise beyond her years. Lyra had been quietly observing Eli from afar, her sharp eyes studying his every move. After a tense meeting with the Galactic Council, she approached him in a quiet corner of the station. Her presence was calming, and for the first time since he had arrived, Eli felt a sense of peace. "You handled yourself well," she said softly, her voice warm and gentle. Eli, surprised by her kindness, nodded. "I'm just trying to make humanity's case, but I don't think they take me seriously." Lyra's eyes twinkled with understanding. "They won't. At least not at first. You're human. But you have something none of us have, a fresh perspective. While we've learned to live with the complexities of the galaxy, your species still has the courage to act on pure belief. That's powerful." Eli was taken aback. "You think so? It feels like no one believes in us." She smiled faintly. "I've seen your kind in action. You fight when others would surrender. That is not something to be overlooked." Her words made Eli feel stronger, but they also made him question the way he had viewed the mission. He had always thought that the galaxy's leaders would see the value of humanity in terms of power, wealth, or technology. But Lyra's words reminded him that humans had something more, something intangible, their resilience and their drive to make things better, no matter the odds. As the summit continued, Lyra became a quiet ally. She would subtly advise Eli in private conversations, offering advice on how to approach certain species or suggesting ways to present humanity's strengths. Eli quickly learned to trust her judgment, though he kept her support a secret. Many of the more aggressive species on the council were not the kind to embrace peaceful solutions, and Eli knew he had to tread carefully. But despite the barriers, Eli began to see small victories. He noticed that some of the more skeptical delegates were starting to listen to his points, no longer brushing him off as a weak, insignificant human. It was slow progress, but it was progress. One evening, after a particularly heated debate, Lyra found Eli alone in the observation deck, gazing out at the stars. The beauty of the galaxy stretched out before him, as vast and infinite as his mission. "You're doing well," she said, stepping beside him. "The others are starting to listen." Eli turned to her, a sense of gratitude filling him. "I couldn't have done it without you." Lyra's smile was soft but sincere. "You're the one speaking. All I did was help you find your voice." For the first time, Eli felt a small spark of hope. Maybe, just maybe, Earth had a place in this galaxy after. The summit had taken a tense turn. What was supposed to be a peaceful negotiation between the galaxy's most powerful species was quickly spiraling into chaos. Eli had never imagined that his first mission as Earth's representative would involve so much conflict. The discussions had started off civil, but soon the cracks began to show. It started with a simple disagreement. A small alien faction, the Scifians, had voiced their concerns about Earth's potential for expansion, worried that humanity would soon invade other planets as they had once done on their own world. The Scifians were a peaceful species, but they had a strong military presence, and they made it clear that they would not allow a dangerous species like humanity to grow unchecked. "What we do on Earth is our business," Eli had said, standing tall before the Scifian representative. "We have no intention of invading anyone. We just want to be treated as equals, to be allowed to make our own choices." But the Scifian delegation wasn't having it. Their leader, a tall, armored figure named Draxer, sneered at Eli. "You're foolish if you think the galaxy will allow your kind to grow unchecked. Earth may be insignificant now, but you're rapidly outgrowing your place." The situation had escalated quickly. Draxer's words were sharp, and the tension in the room was palpable. Eli could feel his heart pounding in his chest, but he didn't back down. This was the moment he had been preparing for. "I may be human, and Earth may be small, but that does not mean we are a threat," Eli argued. "We are here to make peace to grow, and to contribute to this galaxy. We seek cooperation, not conflict." The room fell silent. For a brief moment, Eli thought he might have gotten through to them, but then the Scifian leader raised his hand, signaling for the others to prepare for battle. "We gave you a chance, human," Draxer said, his voice dripping with contempt. "Now we'll show you why Earth is not welcome here." Panic spread through the council chamber as other factions took sides. Some of the more aggressive species, eager for a reason to fight, rallied behind Draxer. Others, including the peaceful Virilians, remained silent, unwilling to take action. Eli stood in the middle, facing not only the Scifians but the weight of all the galaxy's distrust. In that moment, Eli felt completely alone. The weight of the galaxy's judgment pressed down on him. He wasn't just representing Earth anymore. He was fighting for humanity's future. But then, something unexpected happened. Lyra, the Virilian delegate, stood up from her seat and walked toward Eli. Her presence was calm, almost serene, and she spoke in a voice that carried across the chamber. "I believe this dispute is unnecessary," she said. "The human is right. If we act out of fear and distrust, we will only repeat the mistakes of the past." The Scifians hissed, but Lyra continued. "We are all part of this galaxy. Earth is no different from any other species seeking to find its place, and if we turn against them now, we risk losing something much greater, the chance for true cooperation." Lyra's words cut through the tension like a blade. Slowly, the other delegates began to speak up, questioning the Scifians' harsh stance. It wasn't an instant solution, but Lyra's support had given Eli a lifeline. The debate raged on for hours, But Eli felt a renewed sense of determination. This wasn't just about defending Earth. It was about proving that humanity had a place among the stars, and that no matter how small they were, they could stand tall and be heard. The tense atmosphere from the previous debate had barely settled when the announcement came. A galactic-wide alarm echoed through the peace station, sending waves of unease through the delegates. It wasn't just another diplomatic issue. It was something far more dangerous. A deep, booming voice crackled through the station's communication system. "Attention all delegates. A threat approaches. An ancient force, known as the Arishin, is heading towards the galaxy. We have mere days to prepare." Eli froze. He had heard stories about the Arishin, dark, shadowy entities that devoured everything in their path. Entire civilizations had fallen to them. There were few left who dared to even speak their name, and fewer still who had survived an encounter with them. The Arishin were considered a myth by many, stories passed down from long-forgotten times. Yet here it was, a reality too dangerous to ignore. The council chamber erupted in chaos. Delegates from all across the galaxy shouted over each other, arguing over what should be done. The more aggressive factions called for immediate military action. The peaceful races, like the Virilians, advocated for a more cautious approach, seeking to understand the nature of the threat before rushing into war. In the midst of the turmoil, Eli's thoughts raced. The humans were not prepared for something like the Arishin. They hadn't even begun to explore the far reaches of space, let alone defend themselves from an ancient enemy of such power. But as the voices continued to clash, Eli saw a glimmer of hope. He turned to Lyra, the Virilian diplomat who had stood by him during the earlier confrontation with the Ziphians. She looked just as shaken as the rest, but there was a quiet determination in her eyes. "We need to act quickly," Lyra said, her voice calm amid the growing chaos. "The Arishin do not wait. They destroy everything in their path. But there may still be a way to stop them." Eli nodded, feeling the sense of urgency build inside him. He wasn't just representing Earth anymore. The entire galaxy was at risk. "How can we stop them?" he asked, trying to keep his voice steady. Lyra glanced around the room, as if weighing her words carefully. "The Arishin feed on chaos and fear. They thrive on the disarray of war. If we can unite the factions, if we can show them the strength of cooperation, we may have a chance." Eli's mind spun with the enormity of the task ahead. He had already faced the challenge of proving humanity's worth in a galaxy that viewed them with skepticism. Now he had to convince these same beings to unite against a threat greater than anything they had ever imagined. It wasn't going to be easy. The galaxy had never been known for its cooperation. Species that had been at war for centuries were suddenly expected to work together. The deep divisions between them seemed impossible to overcome. But Eli refused to give up. He had seen the potential for peace, for unity, during his time on the peace station. He knew that humanity had a unique ability to find common ground, to rise above fear and division when it mattered most. "We need to act quickly," Eli said, his voice firm with resolve. "Humanity may be small, but we know how to unite when it counts. If we can show the galaxy that we're willing to fight together, they'll see the truth, that we are stronger when we stand side by side." Lyra nodded, her expression filled with both hope and doubt. "It's a long shot, but it's the only chance we have." As the delegates continued to argue, Eli stepped forward. The fate of the galaxy, and humanity's place in it, rested on his shoulders. This was his moment. It was time to prove that Earth was not only worth saving, but also worth fighting for. The next few days aboard the Galactic Peace Station were some of the most intense Eli had ever experienced. The Council had moved quickly after the announcement about the Arishin threat, but the divisions between the species remained deep. Some factions, like the Ziphians, had their own plans for defense, while others, such as the peaceful Virilians, were reluctant to engage in full-scale military action. Eli knew that unity wasn't going to be achieved easily. He had witnessed the galaxy's complex web of politics and rivalries, and the idea of forcing all the species to work together seemed impossible. But one thing Eli understood, something that many of the other species didn't fully grasp, was the power of human ingenuity. For centuries, Earth had faced obstacles far greater than any they had encountered in the stars. But humans had always found a way to adapt, to push past the impossible. Whether it was surviving a global crisis or inventing new technologies, humans knew how to think creatively. And Eli was determined to show the galaxy that this was one of their greatest strengths. In a rare moment of quiet, Eli sat with Lyra in the observation deck, looking out at the stars. The beauty of the galaxy stretched out before them, peaceful and vast. But Eli couldn't focus on the calm. The Arishin were still out there, coming closer with every passing day. Lyra, Eli began, his voice filled with determination. We need to show the galaxy that we're not just survivors. We're problem solvers. We've built our civilizations from nothing. We've adapted to every challenge we faced. Lyra glanced at him, her expression thoughtful. And how do you plan to do that? The Arishin aren't a problem you can solve with creativity alone. Eli's eyes lit up as an idea formed. Maybe not alone, but we can combine our strengths. The different species have their own technologies, their own ways of doing things. We could use that. I've seen it. Some of the tech in the station is advanced beyond anything we have on Earth. But it's all scattered, fragmented. What if we could take the best from each species and create something new? Lyra raised an eyebrow. A united front through technology. Eli nodded. Exactly. If we all contribute something, one piece of technology, one idea, we could build a new weapon or defense system that combines the best of what we each have. Humans might not have the most powerful technology, but we know how to adapt. We can make something work, even with the smallest resources. Lyra looked at him, impressed by the simplicity yet brilliance of the idea. You're thinking outside the box. I think that might actually work, but you'll need to convince the others. They won't want to share their resources. Eli smiled. I've been doing that since the day I arrived. The next few hours were a whirlwind of planning, discussions, and negotiations. Eli proposed the idea to the council, a collaborative effort between all species to build a weapon capable of holding off the Arishin. At first, many delegates were skeptical. Some refused to even consider the idea, while others were more open but hesitant. But Eli didn't back down. He worked tirelessly, talking to each species and explaining how their unique technologies could be used to create something that no single race could build alone. Slowly, he began to win them over. The Scifians, who had initially been the most hostile, offered their advanced energy shields. The Virilians, known for their peaceful nature, contributed their knowledge of defensive tactics. Even the ancient reclusive Cormari, a species known for their mastery of biological engineering, agreed to share their expertise in organic weaponry. One by one, the species began to see the wisdom in Eli's plan. It wasn't just about building a weapon. It was about showing that they could overcome their differences and work together to face a common enemy. And as the pieces of the plan came together, Eli felt a surge of hope. He had done it. For the first time since he had arrived, he saw the galaxy's leaders coming together, not just because they had to, but because they were beginning to believe in each other. Human ingenuity, combined with the strength and knowledge of the galaxy's most powerful species, might just be enough to save them all. The time had come. The pieces of the plan were in place, and the galaxy's leaders were gathered once more, ready to make the most important decision of their lives. The Arishin were still approaching, growing closer with each passing moment. Every species was on edge, and the pressure to act was overwhelming. Eli stood before the council, his heart pounding in his chest. For the past week, he had worked tirelessly to bring together the best technologies and ideas from across the galaxy. The combined weapon, a fusion of alien tech and human ingenuity, was ready. But now it was time to make a choice. whether to gamble everything on a plan that had never been tried before or to risk losing everything to the Arishin. "This is our best chance," Eli said, his voice steady but filled with urgency. "If we don't act now, we risk losing the entire galaxy. The Arishin will destroy everything in their path, and we will be next." The council chamber was silent, all eyes on Eli. The different factions, who had once been so divided, now stood together, united by a common goal. But despite the unity, doubt still lingered in the air. The Arishin were unlike anything they had ever faced. No species had ever successfully stopped them before. Eli took a deep breath, trying to calm his nerves. He knew this was it. He had pushed the galaxy's leaders to this point, and now it was up to them to take the leap. "We have one shot at this," Eli continued. "The weapon we've created may not be perfect, but it's our only hope. We have to trust each other. We have to trust that we can fight this threat together, not as separate species, but as one galaxy. Our differences don't have to divide us. They can make us stronger." Lyra, who had been by his side through this entire journey, stepped forward. Her voice was calm, yet powerful. "Eli's right. The Arishin feed on fear and division. If we stand together, we have a chance. It's not just about the weapon. It's about showing the Arishin that we will not let them break us." Her words seemed to resonate with the delegates. The council began to murmur, exchanging looks of understanding. One by one, they spoke up, agreeing with Eli's plan. Even the Scifians, who had been the most reluctant to cooperate, voiced their support, knowing that this was the only way to save their world and the galaxy at large. The decision was made. The weapon would be deployed, and the united forces would make their stand against the Arishin. It was a huge risk, one that could either lead to their victory or their destruction. But there was no turning back now. As the council dispersed to prepare for the final battle, Eli couldn't shake the feeling that everything had led to this moment. He had come from a tiny planet on the edge of the galaxy, and now he was at the heart of the greatest conflict the galaxy had ever known. Humanity, once dismissed as insignificant, was now at the center of this struggle. It was a strange feeling, one that filled him with both pride and fear. Lyra found him again as the preparations continued. "You did it," she said softly, her voice filled with admiration. "You brought them together." Eli smiled, though it was tinged with uncertainty. "It's not over yet. We still have to win." Lyra nodded. "We will, because we have something the Arishin don't have, hope, and the will to fight for something greater than ourselves." Eli turned to look at her, grateful for her words. They had made it this far. Now, they would see if humanity's courage, and the courage of the galaxy, was enough to face the coming storm. The galaxy was on the brink of war. The Arishin were close, too close for comfort, and the united forces had just finished preparing their last stand. The newly created weapon, a combination of Earth's ingenuity and alien technologies, was ready. It was time for the final negotiation, one last chance to secure the galaxy's future. Eli stood at the heart of the peace station, the atmosphere tense. The council had come together one final time, and their faces showed the weight of the decision before them. They had agreed to combine their resources and fight, but now they had to decide how to launch their attack against the Arishin. "We cannot waste any more time," Draxer, the Scifian leader, said, his voice deep and firm. "We know that the Arishin are coming, and we must strike first." Eli, standing near the table with Lyra by his side, nodded. He could feel the intensity of the moment. This was the moment they had all worked for, the moment to prove that the galaxy could be united, not just in defense, but in hope. "We have to focus on what we can do," Eli spoke up, his voice strong. "We've seen what happens when species fight alone, when we let fear and anger control us. The Arishin are not just another enemy. They feed on chaos, and they thrive on fear. If we are divided, we will fall. If we stand together, we have a chance." There was silence in the room. The weight of his words hung in the air. Eli could see the hesitation in some faces, the fear of an uncertain future. But there was something else in their eyes now, a recognition of what was at stake. Lyra stepped forward, her calm demeanor helping to ease the tension. Eli is right. We have already seen that humanity is capable of great things. If we want to defeat the Arishin, we need to work together, not just as allies, but as one unified force. We are stronger when we combine our strengths, not our divisions. One by one, the delegates nodded. The skepticism was still there, but it was slowly being replaced by something else. Hope. Hope that perhaps this time, they could make a difference. Eli had done what many thought impossible. He had united the galaxy. Now it was time to prove that the galaxy could stand as one. The decision was made. The attack would proceed, but with a unified approach. The weapon would be deployed, and the combined forces of every species would strike at the Arishin's core. It was risky, and there were no guarantees, but it was the only choice they had. As the meeting concluded, Eli felt the weight of the responsibility settle on his shoulders. This wasn't just about fighting the Arishin anymore. It was about the future of the galaxy. If they failed, it wasn't just Earth that would be lost. It would be everything. But if they succeeded, they would prove that no species, no matter how small or insignificant they seemed, was without value. Eli stood at the edge of the peace station, looking out at the stars. For a moment, everything felt surreal. He had come from Earth, a small planet on the edge of the galaxy. Now he was part of something much larger, something that could change the course of history. Lyra joined him, standing quietly beside him. "Are you ready?" she asked. Eli nodded, his heart steady. "I am. We all are." And for the first time, Eli truly believed it. The galaxy had come together, and they would face the Arishin as one. The final negotiation was over. Now, they would fight for their future. The battle against the Arishin had been intense. For days, the galaxy's united forces fought with everything they had. Ships and weapons, technologies from every species, were used in ways no one had ever imagined. Eli had never seen anything like it. Alien ships firing together, human engineers working side by side with the most advanced races in the galaxy. They were no longer just allies. They were a single force, fighting for their survival. And then, in a flash of light, the Arishin were defeated. It wasn't easy, and there had been losses. But in the end, the weapon they had built, the one Eli had helped create, had worked. It wasn't perfect, but it had done the job. The Arishin, that terrifying force, had been stopped. The galaxy was safe, for now. As the news spread, Eli couldn't help but feel a mix of emotions. Relief, of course, but also something deeper. They had won. But it was more than just the victory itself. It was the realization that the galaxy, so divided for so long, had finally come together. They had united in the face of something greater than any of them, and it had worked. The Galactic Council met once more, but this time it was different. There were no arguments, no tensions. The species sat side by side, weary but proud. Even Draxer, the Ziphian leader who had once viewed humanity with contempt, stood alongside Eli. "We have won," Draxer said, his voice low but filled with respect. "But more importantly, we have shown what can happen when we work together." Eli nodded, his heart swelling with pride. He had come to this station as a single human, representing a planet that was still seen as insignificant. Now, humanity's place in the galaxy was secure. Earth wasn't just a small, distant world anymore. It had earned its place among the stars. Lyra approached Eli, a smile on her face. "You did it. You brought us all together. You proved that humanity has something the galaxy needs." Eli smiled back, though his thoughts were on the future. "We didn't just prove it to them. We proved it to ourselves." The council was filled with conversation now, each species discussing what came next. Trade agreements were being set, new alliances were being formed, and for the first time, The idea of a united galaxy didn't seem impossible. The barriers that had once separated them were slowly starting to fall. As the discussions continued, Eli stood by the window of the council chamber, looking out at the stars. Earth, once so small and distant, now had a voice in the galaxy. The victory over the Arishin had shown everyone that humanity had value, not just as survivors, but as contributors, as thinkers, as innovators. It wasn't just about fighting. It was about what humanity could offer to the galaxy: creativity, resilience, and the drive to make the impossible possible. Lyra joined him at the window, her presence a reminder of everything they had achieved together. "So what now?" she asked. Eli turned to her, a sense of peace settling in. "Now we rebuild. We build the future, together." For the first time, Eli felt a true sense of belonging. Humanity was no longer just a footnote in the galaxy's history. They were part of something bigger. The galaxy had changed, and so had Earth's place in it. It had been weeks since the galaxy's victory over the Arishin, and yet the changes were still unfolding. Earth, once a quiet planet at the edge of the galaxy, now had a place among the stars. The Council was no longer just a distant group of alien species, but a symbol of unity. And at the heart of that unity was the simple truth: humanity had proven its worth. Eli Turner had returned to Earth, but it wasn't the same world he had left behind. The news of their victory, of Earth's role in saving the galaxy, had spread across every corner of the planet. People no longer looked at space as something distant and unreachable. Now they saw it as a new frontier for humanity. Back on Earth, Eli stood in front of the world's leaders, who were gathered for a new kind of summit. A summit not just for Earth, but for all species who now saw humanity as equal. The leaders of every faction had agreed to establish new lines of communication, trade, and diplomacy, all thanks to the courage and ingenuity shown by a single human diplomat. "You have done something no one believed possible," said the President of the United Nations, a quiet respect in his voice as he addressed Eli. "You united us with the galaxy, and now Earth stands as a beacon of hope." Eli nodded, his thoughts still on the Council, on Lyra, and the other species he had come to know. But now, more than ever, he realized how much had changed. The quiet, unassuming human he had once been was now a symbol of Earth's potential. "We are no longer alone," Eli said, his voice steady. "The galaxy has seen what humanity is capable of. But this is just the beginning. We must build, we must grow, and we must remember that the future is not just ours. It belongs to all of us." The crowd cheered, and Eli felt a warm surge of pride. The victory over the Arishin had been more than a battle. It had been a turning point. The galaxy had stood together, and humanity had stood at the center of it all. Lyra's words echoed in his mind. "It's not just about fighting. It's about what humanity can offer: creativity, resilience, and the will to rise above everything." Eli had witnessed it firsthand, how humanity had come together in moments of crisis, how they had faced fear and uncertainty, and how they had found the strength to rise above it. The same strength that had helped them win the war against the Arishin was the strength that would carry them forward into the future. As he looked around the room, Eli knew that humanity was no longer a fledgling species just trying to survive. They were a part of something much bigger. They had a voice, and it would be heard. Earth was no longer just a planet. It was a cornerstone of the galaxy's future. Outside, the sun was setting, casting a warm glow over the world. Eli stood at the window, watching the stars twinkle in the sky. It wasn't just the stars that were different now. It was everything. Humanity had earned its place in the universe. They were no longer the underdogs. They were a force to be reckoned with. And the future, it was full of possibilities, endless opportunities waiting to be explored. Eli smiled. The journey had just begun.